So tonight, author, speaker, consultant, writer, educator, you've done it all, Donna. Um, First, just kind of going in, you have this unique way of applying your storytelling ability to the UX experience. We're excited to get some of your feedback on that. But before we get started, I just want to kind of go over our sponsor for this event, which is Rosenfeld Media. Rosenfeld Media provides us with all kinds of support to the book club, and also provides us a lot of support when it comes to the UX community in general, with such wonderful books, events, and all sorts of other things. Definitely, if you haven't had the opportunity to go to Rosenfeld's website and look at some of their other offerings, definitely do that. And of course, through May, I believe we are getting a 20% discount off of this book if you haven't bought it already, The User's Journey. Just put in UXBCLA at checkout and get that discount. So during the event, as we're going through this, like I said, this is more of a book club. It's more of a collaborative effort between everybody coming together and learning more about the book. So if you do have a question, there's two different ways that you can go ahead and ask those questions. You could either ask them in the chat window of the panel. So if you're go to webinar control panel, just go into the chat, type in any question. We'll open up your mic so you can go ahead and ask your question directly to Donna. Or you could go ahead and tweet it right to the handle. It'll be UXBCLA. And of course, go ahead and put that with Donna's, which is D Lichaw. And tweet us those questions, and we'll make sure that we open up your mic so you can ask those. So with that being said, thank you, Donna, for spending time with us to go over your new book. So just kind of in opening up, tell us a little bit about what's going on when you're not writing books.
Sure. Well, when I'm not writing books, I'm hanging out with my dog Ralph, who's very cute. He's here right now. He's hanging out in the other room, and I'm working, consulting. The super exciting on-work stuff is my wife is pregnant. We're about to have a baby sometime, hopefully in the next week or two. Although I guess it's who knows. But other than that, I'm just wrapping up a really fun project, Central Park in New York City, is where I live. I live in Brooklyn. And I also this semester was teaching at the School of Visual Arts in their IXD Interaction program. So that was really fun. So it's been a kind of a busy spring so far.
Absolutely. That is a very busy schedule. Very busy schedule. So so you're in Brooklyn. So of course I have to ask the weather is because I'm in Southern California. It's
It's nice. I don't know. It feels like a weird spring. It got really warm a few weeks ago, and now it's chilled down a little bit. So it's spring. I'm a spring. I'm very happy to have a spring.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. Um, so yeah, speaking, you'd mentioned, that you are currently teaching some different classes. So is that still at Parsons, or is that at a different university, or?
Yeah, it's at a different school now. I was teaching at Parsons School of Design for the last on and off about for the last 8 years or so. And this year I started teaching at the Interact Design program at the School of Visual Arts, which if you're in New York, everyone seems to know what it is, but outside of New York, people don't like haven't always heard of that school. But it's this amazing program that's run by Liz Danzico, and the faculty is completely amazing. It's people like Jeffrey Zeldman, Karen McGrain, Nicole Fenton, just a whole host of incredible folks. So it's one of those special programs, and I'm really honored to be a part of.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. That sounds wonderful. Yeah, I know we have some different programs out here, um, but it's always interesting to get to see to kind of get to work with top talent and learn from them. So it's great, and that's kind of what you're doing, kind of with your book, is kind of bringing your talent out there so multiple people can learn from you. Very good. Um, so so your background is unique. It's not actually as much your educational background isn't as much in maybe human centered design and a little bit more in entertainment, maybe.
Kind of, yeah. My background is actually in documentary filmmaking, and it's kind of entertainment, but it actually, the funny thing is, I was trained in ethnography, trained in a different kind of human-centered design where I was taught how to interview people, synthesize ideas, do research, put it all together, and just instead of building a interactive product, what we were building was a narrative product, something that would be a movie that you would sit through and watch beginning to end. Later on in film school, at least, a lot of film programs. One I was in tried to get more into interactive media and got really excited about different possibilities for getting away from linear storytelling, more into interactive storytelling. And for me, that was kind of because I went to film school. I was trained as a documentary filmmaker. I've always worked in tech. Been working in tech for I keep saying 15 years, but I think it's 20 years now. The last 5 years, I keep saying 15. Yeah, I've always been working in tech. That's what I love doing, helping businesses build digital strategies, build better, more engaging websites, software apps, cross-platform services. So my background is kind of technically film, but self-taught, like a lot of people in my generation. We came out in the 90s. We taught ourselves how to build things that people love.
It's very good. I really, I knew that there was kind of a parallel the way that a story is created and the way the user experience is created, but I think your book did a great job kind of uniting those two in a way that I can use the techniques from storytelling and apply it to a UX, kind of a UX journey. Absolutely. Before I get too far, I have to ask. Got your book right here. I have to ask about the scribble. You know, I, I've
The
gotten
infamous.
the infamous scribble. Everyone I talk to says, "Man, why did you deface your book?" So what is about the scribble?
So I want to say you have to ask Lou Rosenfeld about that scribble. So the books in the Rosenfeld series are the cover designed by this amazing book designer, and the inspiration for the scribble came from the book designer. When I saw it, I think I had the same reaction that a lot of people had, which was, "Wait, is that supposed to be there?" But I immediately fell in love with it, and I have been really enjoying the struggle that so many people have had when they've seen the scribble and think, "Wait, there's something on my cover." So I'm not 100% sure behind it. I think Lou would be able to fit in a little bit more on that, but I can what the rationale behind it is, and I just love that people sort of have this struggle between what looks like printed something and looks like the hand marked word, hand drawn word, or scribble.
Yeah, it's
It's not a
it's great now that you've told me about it. It really adds an element of I don't know, whimsy to the actual cover. I would say a hashtag I would probably adopt is honor the scribble. That I'll let you go and have that one. But it's great. It's wonderful. I always like Rosenfeld's his uh, his cover designs and all those sorts of things. They're always wonderful. So getting into the actual the book itself. Um, so how did you first come about saying, okay, well, I'm going to take this storytelling approach and create a way that I can actually apply that in my UX process?
So the way I started applying it, or the reason it was twofold. A few years ago, I was heading up product at a startup, and we had this app, the service website that it was really struggling. We were struggling to get people to sign up to use it. We were struggling to get people to, if they did sign up, continue to use it. And we were especially therefore struggling to get people to pay to use the service. And it was a service that the business was relying on revenue to keep it afloat and consumer revenue. And so what we were trying to do all these kind of, at the time, lean tests where this hypothesis would be out there, tested, A/B test, on and on. And what we just found was that, like, just basically nothing was working. It was too fragmented, and we were missing a little bit of something, but no one was quite sure what it was. And at the same time, I just started teaching a class that had more contact hours than I'd ever had before. It was something like 6 or 8 hours a week of class time, and this is what I was doing on top of actual work. I teach for fun, which is a little wacky. But so I just started thinking, oh my God, how am I going to entertain students for these, really long classes twice a week? And I was putting some of my decks together, PowerPoint presentations, and it just kind of occurred to me, like, if I was making a film and not a PowerPoint presentation, I would be using a narrative arc to fit everything together to make sure that people get engaged and stay engaged and then learn something and remember what I learned. And so I, started thinking, all right, I'm going to do the same for my students. It's something that it's part of presentation design. If you read any books on presentation design, Duarte or presentations, and they all talk about narrative architecture about it. It's how you engage audience. And so I started doing that with my students, and it was working so well that then I would come to work with the startup and think, you know what, why isn't it the same thing? Why, when we prototype something new, are we not weaving a narrative arc through that interaction and through that flow, through that journey? And on the bigger scale of things, I started asking, why is the entire journey structured like, with a narrative arc at its core? We're working on marketing campaigns. Why can't you bring people in and do the same thing that I would do with my students, the same thing that we started doing with prototypes and having a lot of success with? And so it, I think because startup was struggling so much and was about to go out of business, we had full reign over everything and got to just throw caution to the wind and redo everything from scratch. And it was the first time that I kind of had this perform of using story architecture to re-envision everything from what the concept of the product was to how all the flows worked, to how marketing and acquisition funnels worked, to how life cycle retention worked. And it was kind of mind blowing, and the company just started doing really well. It's now they're doing absolutely wonderfully. They're like tripled their size and tripled their valuation. They're they already have a profit. They had a profit within a couple of months. So that kind of, for me, it changed everything. And then I just started doing that all of my projects ever since, and with the client I've worked with since, and still my students.
Very good. Very good. So it almost sounds as if this isn't just a process that you can do or a technique that you can use at the beginning when you're first starting out to create a new concept, even though you can use it, but also to diagnose issues once you do get a little deep in there and things aren't going the way you want.
Yeah, you can use it, and for pretty anything. For if you're defining a completely new product or feature for a larger product, you can use it to define it and make sure that, okay, is this idea good enough, or are our users excited about this? Because you can and should test it with actual users and customers. And it should also come from insights. It's rare that you're just making stuff on your own, but if you are, it's okay. You test it, and use it to build out any prototype of any key interaction or flow, something that's really important, like a payment flow, if you're building a calendar calendar app, any flows you have there, you want to work. The possibilities are endless. I've been working on a few projects lately that are for nonprofits, and so the giving funnel and the intention to give and to continue to give, that's the stories. Those are flows and journeys that we can map out and test as well. So it's really any news a story. That's what I always say. Anything anything. I've worked on projects for live events. Those are stories. I still mapped my wedding. I love to tell people that, and it was awesome. Ask anyone who went there. It works.
Very good. Yeah, when I was reading through this, I thought what a great way, because we're always talking about, as a startup, getting those investors and telling a story. Just don't show the product, sell the story. And this is, gives a great framework for being able to come up with one of those stories that you could put into a deck and be able to show your interaction points and those key moments that really gets investors really excited about your product. And
Investors, your boss will be excited.
yeah,
It works on my levels.
absolutely. And I really liked in your book where as a lean approach of saying, okay, well, just test out the idea. Let's just find out if somebody's even interested in this. So, defining that character and then bringing it all the way through the story, but then you have a way that you can actually create a landing page inside of there and using the story elements, just pull those out and then just slap them onto a landing page layout and test out that idea. I thought that was great. That was really, really good. Um, yeah, I mean, it was a great technique that I think a lot of people can apply because sometimes we go into landing pages and we don't know really what to focus on or what to put forward as far as a value prop, and I think it did a great job on that. Um, Now, as far as your approach, how do you feel that kind of fits in? There's all these different methodologies, all the different things that we're actually doing. Everything from, we have storyboarding, we have, as far as the ethnography and all the discovery stuff. How do you see this fitting into the UX workflow or the UX process?
I see this fitting in every facet of the UX workflow, the product management workflow, even the marketing workflow. I've been working with a lot of digital team lately where marketing is involved, which is wonderful, and it fits in everything. So when you're working on a research project, what I always make sure my clients do, and sometimes I do the research myself, is when you're talking to customers or potential customers, your job is not just to uncover what problems they might have and how you or your solution might solve those problems, but it's to uncover the story. Because the problem is one part of a narrative structure with many plot points, and so I'm sure that I structure my interview scripts and that I guide the research, whether I'm doing it, whether I'm coaching a team to do the research. Make sure that I get it in a way that you're going to get answers to all of the questions to piece together a story. And then if you need to synthesize your findings, again, same thing, piece together. I wish you could see my wall right now, but it's a whiteboard is full of scribbles, much like you see in the book project that I'm wrapping up right now. That's how we synthesize the research. It was just scribbles and scribbles of, okay, this is what we heard from people. These are the patterns that we see. This is what we're going to do with these patterns. And then it needs to, follow through from your strategy through to actual the design phase. Once you're designing the flows, that same story needs to echo in, pretty everything that's important when you want to grab your customers. And then it also needs to be something that you're thinking of when you are testing out any of your ideas, concepts, or prototypes. And that's something I talk about in the book as well, which is the idea of when you're doing something like a usability test or an in-person concept test, you can measure the success of your story by judging how the flow of the narrow architecture is going. You see people react at the right point, the high point. They should have their eyes should light up and or they should smile, since we call it the smile test. And you can also measure the effect of your story in web analytics. That's something that funnels and flows drop off is it's a cliffhanger, and there are ways to overcome it. And so yeah, it's not so much a new process that when I train teams, when I work with client projects as a consultant, it's not a new process. It's just a different way of thinking that you really need to at everything you do.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. You mentioned a little bit earlier about, this applies to everybody, all the different stakeholders, whether it be marketing, UX, product. How do you get somebody to buy into that? As far as saying, hey, you know what? I know you've got a lot of things that we already do. We do the experiment board. We do, all these other things. How do I help my stakeholders really embrace this process?
The best way is so when I do my workshop with clients, I try to make sure that we get as many of those stakeholders in the room as possible, and that we get people from marketing, from dev, and engineering, from design, product, sales. Even it depends. Every company is different. Some there might be a marketing team, some might more have a sales team, some have both, and make sure the key players are there. And so when I'm first explaining to people how this concept works, how story structure works, and what you can do with it, usually if someone marketing is in the room or content especially, it's always wonderful because one, they start to feel ownership of the product or the brand. They're glad that someone invited them to this training, and they also offer the idea of story structure. It resonates with people who aren't designers, aren't developers, but are more on the creative side of things like marketing and content, because they probably already know about story structure. They probably are writing a novel at night on the side or on the weekends. And so when you tell them, hey, this thing that you already know about that you can use to collaborate with your design teams and with developers and with everyone across the organization, the buy-in happens that way. If we can't get different stakeholders in a workshop, then I think it still works out because the people who attend my workshops get enough tools that they're able to easily communicate with people across the organization. And I think all the time, like, oh God, this idea for a new feature I had, it went to the top of my company and now we're building it, and this is so good. Thank you. So not everyone has to be there, but whoever can be there, it ends up being just a really, really fun day, and doesn't feel like work, which is nice.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, that's a great approach. Just kind of that bringing everybody in. People really do like learning new techniques and new ways of framing um, problems and coming up with solutions. It's great. Um, Now, while you're doing that, so you're in the presentation. What are some of the different things that people tend to have trouble with? So, if I was to conduct one of these training sessions and start outlining how to do a story mapping, what could I expect?
Well, I mean, so usually what we start tackling is engagement related challenges that you might be having. So it might be, oh, we'll have this one feature that we launched a few months ago. No one's using it. A product manager thought it was a really great idea, and we're not really sure what the point of it is, so we didn't build it very well. Or it might be a product manager saying, I don't know, I thought this thing was so cool, but like I'm not really sure why no one's using it. And so we'll go through all the different types of stories that I outline in the book, and working through what is the concepts that you're trying to envision. How do you expect people to find this thing, and then how do you expect people to experience it? And are we making this up, or is it a best guess or hypothesis, or is this something that you know based on data? And whether it's based on data or not, how are we going to then go test it? And so usually at the end of the day, what we're left with is a some kind of strategy for moving forward, which is, okay, this is who we think our audience is. This is what we think that the story they should experience is based on what we know, what we think we know. And this is what we're going to spend the next few months building out. These are going to be our guiding principles, and this is how we're going to test them. So I think the biggest challenge is usually the initial, always at the beginning of the day, there's this weird skepticism of, are we drawing stick figures? We're just going to like be having fun. What is this thing? And then by the end of the day, people realize it's actually a really powerful business tool that they're learning, a different way of thinking to kind of do that thing we always talk about in our field, which is marry business goals and user goals and sort of have them uh, work in harmony with one another. So it's pretty powerful. Any skeptic room is just sleep by the end of the day, which is always really fun.
Hmm. And because you probably teach this technique in your classes. Um, when students are actually doing this, what are some of those problem areas where you're like, hey, you might want to focus on here, or maybe the story's a little weak here. I think I'm a decent storyteller, especially after a few beers. But where are those problem areas where you say, well, you're a little thin on the action, the inciting action and things like that. Where do you typically see stories falling apart when it comes to the UX story in general?
Yeah, where I typically see stories falling apart, and it's with my students and it's with clients as well. Whether like no matter what kind of project we're working on, this always comes up, which is there is this tendency that we have to pull into whether we're using story to map out research findings or whether we're using story to map out like a future state or what we want something to be like in the future after it's redesigned or reconfigured. What I often see is that it so make everybody map out these stories on arcs because when we used to do it in the early days as bulleted lists or as just conversations and improv, which are also great tools, what I found was that that impact that you have of that y-axis, which is action or tension, that impact would often be lost, which is the story would turn into, and then this happened, and then this happened, and this person went and did this, and then they did this, and the end. And what's really, really important is that you have that sort of mathematical vision map out in a way so that the problem that the user experiences at the beginning that calls them to action is resolved at the climax in a way that feels really, really, really valuable to them. And then that the story is resolved somehow in the end. In other words, it just has to finish up somehow, and you always need to ask yourself that. And so the biggest thing that I always have to crack that whip with my client and my students, which is that high point, is it really a high point, or is it just another thing that happens? So if it's like a checkout flow, for example, oh, and then they add it to their cart, and then they do that, and then they click, and they enter their payment information. At the end, it's like, okay, so what was the high point? If it was when they enter their payment information, then you've got a lot of work to do to make that really, really, really special. And so it's just about re-engineering the flows in the way that we want things to work so that the tension is embraced and all the reasons why people might not want to continue to use your product, continue with this flow, is overcome. And so that's the biggest thing. And it's the same with with film. It's just like making sure that the balance is there. The second biggest thing is just that it takes most people forever to get to kickstarting moment at the beginning of the story, and just there's way too much exposition, way too much stuff happening, and that happens with films too. So it's really about getting to the point. We can't expect people to be really patient and sit through a long pitch or a incredibly long sign up flow without getting them hooked right away. So um, yeah, those are the things. It takes practice, but you get better at it over time.
Yeah, I guess one of the things, is cut to the chase. I guess is as a movie term, is what are those steps, which is very interesting because you could kind of see this almost turning into a user journey. But I think, and I'd love to get your feedback on this. It feels more emotional than it more puts in an emotional attribute to it than just it went from here to here to here to here. Kind of like you mentioned, it's more that emotion that's going on and triggering that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I would say emotion is a huge part of it. It's emotion, and it's just that meticulously crafted structure that is um, built off of engineering emotional reactions, and it's really about thinking like a TV writer or a yeah, I would say you're right. I'm a filmmaker, but a TV writer. I was watching a show before I jumped on the call because I'm on the East Coast, so it's bedtime here, and I was watching this show that it's called the Return. It's a French kind of gothic horror um, uh, TV show. It's completely amazing, and it was the last episode, and I'm like, oh my God, what happened? Because it was so insane. They kind of built up this story over the series of 7 episodes, and then on this eighth episode, they just, did all the crazy stuff. Now I really want to know what happens in the next season, and they did that season too. And using products and services is the same. I mean, you can't expect that people are just going to intrinsically want to do things. We're by nature humans are objects at rest that want to stay at rest, and so it's narrative structure is something that cognitive psychology and neuroscientists talk a lot, which is it's how our brains want to experience life, and it's how we remember things, and it's also how we end up communicating things. Like my niece, since she was like since she could start talking, she started telling stories, and the structure was always there. So it's something, it is about emotion, and it's just about making sure that we don't bore our customers, either boring ideas or boring flows or boring apps or services that after months they just don't care about returning to. So yeah, I would say emotion is a good word to use.
And also in the book, because you had mentioned that kind of the show that you were watching had a bit of you call that a cliffhanger, kind of just it leaves you up there, and then it doesn't allow that drop off. Because I get a lot of clients that come to me and says, "Well, I'm more of a transactional product. They come in, they get what they want, they leave, and then they're gone, and then I have to capture them back the next time they want to do something. I want more engagement. I want more retention on the site and things like that. How can I structure a story in which it kind of, I'm assuming that's what you mean by a cliffhanger, kind of keeps them engaged? How can I do that? Or
Yeah, so there are different ways to do that, and it always depends on the product. But I'm gonna I'm trying to think of a recent example. So actually, this I think the last few projects I've worked on. I'll give you one example. Which was a an app. I was helping public radio station better understand this app that they had developed. It was a proof of concept, something that they thought was a cool idea, but they weren't really sure what to do with it, or if their listeners wanted the app in the first place, and if there are ways to improve it. And so but but the idea was that it would build you a art playlist based on topics that you were interested of public radio content, and listenership and usership of the app had, it peaked and then it had started really going down, and so the radio station's worrying like, oh God, are we just going to spend money on yet another app that nobody wants? What do we do? And what we found was that people who use the app every day, because there always are those people. If a business doesn't have those people, then you need to go back to the very, very, very beginning of the drawing board and figure out, okay, why is nobody using this? But whatever the business metric is, it could be people use it every day or every week or every month. You always have people. When we went out and talked to those people, what we found is that the people who love the app, who found a lot of value in it, kept using it every day because they want to stay up to date on the news and just like always be filled in. Like that was their relationship with public radio. I always just wanted to know what's going on, and this is how to do it. I use the playlist feature because what's on there I don't always want to listen to. So there might be a jazz show in the moment, and I don't care, but I just want my topics. And what we also found is those people who started to drop off, the only reason they started to drop off is not because they weren't getting value out of using it, it's because they just forgot about it, because they had to manually go and create a playlist every day, and that's a lot of work that you're expecting people to do. So what we have in the roadmap is a bunch of different ways to get people to come back, based on reminders, based on content automatically downloading, based on playlists happening more in the background, based on a more seamless experience that constantly there with you, just like public radio is there with you for people in the real world. Often when you got like a serial journey, how to get people to come back, as long as they're experiencing value the first time, it might just be a reminder that they need, like some way of like, oh right, my content is ready, it's 8 a.m., I'm going to jump on the train and listen to my content. Same thing with a couple of nonprofit projects I've been working on lately, which is the big question is always, why do people give, and how do we get more people to give? And when asked, the biggest reason why people don't give, those who have given, it's really, oh, nobody asked me. And so that's when I say marketing teams should be a part of the strategy. It might be, okay, your product, your website, your app is amazing, but you might need to be best friends with the marketing team to make sure that an email goes out to people to give, and then they'll be brought into your website and into the fold. So it's, there are a lot of, it really depends on the project, but there are a lot of different ways to engineer serial engagement, make sure that people are not just happy once, but that they keep coming back.
Very good. Yeah, because that's a constant problem that I run into. Very good. We did get a question from John. John, let me go ahead and open up your mic so you can ask your question. Here we go. Let's see. Make sure I can do this correctly. I'm sorry. Where is GoToWebinar always makes this very easy. Why can't I find him any longer? Oh, I hope I didn't kick him out. I don't think I did. Well, the question.
I see him on here.
Yeah, I see John.
Okay.
So, he moved over to the. There you go. All right, John. Go ahead and.
You can hear me?
Yes,
Hey,
yes.
yeah, real quick. Hey, Donna. I noticed you were
Hi.
in the entertainment industry. I was curious if you were familiar with Blake Snyder's Save the Cat
Yeah.
and the
Uh-huh.
beach. And the beach. I haven't read your book, but I'm curious because you talked about kind of this emotional side of Ernie. So I was just curious if you use Blake Snyder's beat sheet in any way to kind of guide what you've done in kind of the emotional and building a user journey.
It's a great question. So a beat sheet is a kind of story framework that a lot of filmmakers use that is so meticulously laid out that everything down to it often gets to the point where if you haven't gotten to your inciting incident or call to action by page 10, you're screwed. If you haven't gotten to this by this by this page, and there are all these moments. And if you go to the movies, and I'm sure. Well, you're all LA, so you probably still go to the movies, but and I'm totally kidding. But if when you go to the movies, like Hollywood movies, what you notice is that these days they're all very, very formulaic, all the same length of time, and you can pretty much call out what plot point is going to happen when. And so yeah, I was making films. I would totally, maybe use something like that. Maybe it's not very cool to say that you use something like that, but I think it's there. A lot of people have been trained on that, and screenwriters like Robert McKee, who it's all this idea of like put your cards up on a wall and then rearrange them.
Right.
But I found that for interactive products, websites, software, apps. I spent a lot of time researching all of the different frameworks out there. So another one is I was just looking at it today, Dan Harmon's Story Circle. Someone I went to college with was joking that oh man, it was Steve Perry, like Melanie, a song, is like able to break down the song from the 80s using Dan Harmon's Story Circle. And, there are like a million different story framework and diagrams out there, and they're all wonderful. But I found is for our type of work, they're all too complex. And I would get overwhelmed trying to use a different framework, and so did my clients. It was just too much to really, really get through, and that the first that I kept coming back to over time was just narrative art, because it's so deadable. It forces you to simplify. It forces you to not get lost in the weeds. And if ever you can't fit something in a narrative arc and you start getting way detailed, it forces you to break it into multiple stories so that you really have clarity on each compact part. So
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
yeah,
It's very, thank you.
sure.
Great question, John. So remember, if you have any questions whatsoever, please put that into the GoToWebinar questions. Just go in there, ask a question, type in your question so we can open up your mic so you can ask Donna. We haven't gotten any questions really from Twitter, so we'll just continue on with my subpar questions. Actually, that's the funny thing is I do these book clubs, and I'm trying to come up with questions, and a lot of them get answered by the book. That's you did a great job in there. One question I always like to ask is that what got caught on the cutting room floor? Was there anything in that now that you completed the book, you're like, I really wish I would have put that in the book?
um, the only thing I wish I had left in the book was, and I think I'm going to write a post. I'm going to use it as a blog post, turn it into a blog post soon, because I thought it was totally hilarious. But one day my editor and I were working, and we were just being ruthless and just cutting things that anything we had a question about. Like, this came up, and she's like, "What was this for again?" And I said, "I don't know, cut it." And we cut it, and I still regret it. Which is this idea of there was a sidebar in the book that talked about how you can get better at seeing stories and things, and get better at crafting stories in your everyday life outside of work, so that you could get better at it for work. And what I'm saying is that the best thing that I found to do is to watch reality TV. And like my favorite show, one of my favorite shows is Pitbulls and Parolees, and it's totally awesome. And every episode is so formulaic and so scripted, and it really teaches you a lot of narrative structure. It's like the skeleton is apparent, and there's not a whole lot of meat there. And sometimes it's totally enjoyable, but you learn a lot about a craft a story by looking at things like that. And my favorite is Cook's Illustrated, which that's when I started realizing several years ago when I was working at that startup that oh my God, everything is a story because their recipes have a narrative structure to them. And they always start with this struggle of like, oh my God, you want to cook rice, but like it gets stuck. How do you cook rice and not have it stick or be, wet and muddy or like overly dry? We set out to fix this problem, and then they tell you how to solve your problem. You become the hero by teaching you how to make the perfect rice. And so yeah, that sidebar got cut, and I'm very sad, but I'm totally going to turn it into a blog post. Fear not.
Oh, very good. Very good. Yeah, it almost sounds like an infomercial. I would assume the infomercial uses that same kind of narrative. You know, you want to cook on the go. Here's something that'll fit right into your life. But that's a great point that you bring up. Is that practicing this, and that way you can kind of master it with the easy stuff. Maybe your own life or your own personal experiences, and then get to the harder things. Um,
It helps. I mean, I can't go to the movies now. It's gotten a little bit better, but or yeah, I can't go to the movies for a while. I'd go to the movies with my partner Erica, and half like just like different points throughout the timeline. I would whisper, I'd be like, "Oh, this isn't gonna be good for too much longer. Just wait 2 seconds," And like she was ready to kill me after a while because it became a really fun game. And I actually wish I had been doing that in film, but I'd never. I was a documentary filmmaker for some reason. I thought that truth didn't have this structure, and I kind of made some really terrible movies and some really great ones that won't work. So it's like I never really thought too much consciously of why some were more successful than others. But yeah, no, it's like if you go to the movies with me, watch out because I'm going to be really really annoying. But it's a great way to just get really into it. Just watch. It's like learning how to play music. Like you first need to learn how to draw. You need to learn how to see before you can draw. You need to learn how to hear before you can play music. Stories are much the same. You need to see them everywhere in films, but also in products. Next time you get excited about an app that someone tells you is the cool thing ever, think about why you got excited about it and what the story structure there is. Or next time you use an app for the first time and you think, oh my God, that was so cool. Or next time you give to a nonprofit, think about why you felt so great and how that story played out. And you can start seeing stories everywhere, and over time you get a little bit better at engineering them on purpose, which is pretty cool.
yeah, it's very interesting. Not only taking a look like you'd mentioned as far as stories that worked, but then it's easy to recognize stories that don't work, which then you can address at business or whatever it may be that you're working on to better that story. Because I run into situations where you had mentioned TV and film where you'll see something and I'll be like that wasn't really good, but I don't know why it wasn't good. And now, kind of taking a look at your technique, you could probably map that out and understand exactly where it broke down.
Yeah, I mean, there are um, a few places where this can break down, and I think this is something that got cut from the book as well, which is this idea that things can break down because the story structure at its foundation is just broken, or the pacing is wrong, or things just don't make sense, or don't resonate with you as a viewer, or extrapolate that to you as a user. But then there's also this idea, which is if you think about it, I think Settle talked about this, which is there's the skeleton, and then there's oh no, it was Aristotle. God, this is why I wrote a book also. Like I was telling everyone, oh, if you want to learn, just go read Aristotle or E. Forster or something like that. But there's a skeleton, and then there's all the flesh and the skin on top of it, and so you could have a very great story structure, and then everything else falls apart. And that might be because if it's a film, it might be because the acting is terrible, or because the you can't tell if it's a comedy or horror, or like what's going on. And the tone might be off, or it could just be aesthetics don't work. Like there are a million reasons why things could fail, and it's the same with digital products. It could be you have a story structure that's perfect, but then when you actually build it out with the team, it could be that the imagery isn't quite resonating with people, and you need to go back to your story and make sure, hey, are these the right images for our homepage or our landing page? Or it could be the copy isn't quite working well, and then you go back and say, all right, is the tone correct? We thought this product was about like, fun and serendipity, but people are using it at work, and it's an enterprise tool. What happened? That's, and you kind of revisit the story that way. So, but 9 out of 10, like if usually it's, and with movies too, usually there's something wrong about the script if it's working. Humans are we're pretty easy creatures as long as there's that narrative arc where really suck in and driven to call to action.
Yeah, yeah, and I have my own way with stories is that my ADD starts kicking in, and then all of a sudden I'm telling you a story about one thing, and all of a sudden it's jetting off, and I'm telling you a story about something else, and I never bring it back to the original story. So I always have to train myself. Wait, what was I trying to do here? Okay, now I remember, and actually finish the story. Um, Otherwise, I'll be three stories deep and never go back to it. But yeah, it's interesting to take a look at existing products and existing stories and really apply that. And that's kind of one of the things that you mentioned inside of there. You've got a lot of great case studies. Actually, the one case study that you had that I thought was really a great product was that I don't know if that was a fake case study. The fitness
Fit tracker.
yeah, fit tracker. I was actually
Yeah, or fit counter. I forget. No, fit tracker. I don't remember.
fit counter or fit tracker or something like that. But it shows as an interesting way is that you could use this story to kind of map it out when things don't work right. Tell me a little bit about testing and iterating on the story and how I can, maybe if something isn't going well, how I can better that.
Sure. So that story in the book was it in fictionalized story, meaning it was just anonymous. It changed the name. It was a real company that I worked with, the one I was talking about earlier, where we had this app and website service, and it was just like failing about to the business, and we couldn't figure out how to save it. In the end, engineering a story saved it, and injecting that story into everything like made it wildly successful. And so the idea with iterating is that with that, and actually with everything I've done ever since, the idea is that the story it's we tried making up the story because I think for a while, just wanted to work quickly and realize, okay, the product was failing. I had a hunch that, you know what, I think we need a story. And so what I started to do was run story workshops uh, with stakeholders around the company, and we would try to come up with, all right, what is the story of, and I'll, you say fit counter, because yeah, I'm not going to use the company name. Try to be respectful.
Yeah.
We try to figure out, hey, what's the story, and these workshops failed miserably because we just couldn't figure it out. And so that's when I went out and I started talking to customers, and I started using narrative architecture to come up with scripts and doing my interviews that way. And that's when I realized, oh, they told me the story in 2 days of talking to people. This is the story is. And once we had that, this is kind of basically it's like a perfect case in this that these are all things that I do with clients now. But next, the way we tested it, we ran a bunch of ads. We ran Facebook ads. We ran actually a radio ad, which was really fun because imagine talking to radio ad people, telling them, "Hey, I have a narrative arc for you," and they're like, "Oh my God, your job for us, thank you, great." And so yeah, we just ran sort of ads with different types of keywords that we weren't quite sure um, how they fit into the story. So was it about what do people care about, tracking or training? You know, like which word was essential to supporting the story, and we would date it that way. Then we would redesign the homepage and A/B test. All right, do people want to do? Do they want to sign up, or do they want to start training? And so start training would, and so that would be the first plot point of journey. That would be that onboarding flow. And then we would onboarding flows and check Google Analytics funnel drop-offs, and then see, okay, everyone's dropped off here, the cliffhanger, why. We would go do in-person tests. We would talk to people. We would maybe come up with ideas, and onwards and onwards. And we did this for all of the prototypes that built, all of the in-person testing, all of the remote testing, the analytics tracking, and it kind of, just like iterate always. Oh, okay, this didn't work. We thought this was the story, and then okay, let's change it here, tweak it there. And so that's what I teach in my workshop, and that's what I make clients do, because just like with filmmaking, nothing, everything is iterative. Like, you have a first draft, it's not going to be perfect, or a first cut. You're going to iterate and test until you're on the right track. So those are the different ways that I typically do it.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, because that's one of the struggles that I, sometimes run into is that, okay, you have this story, you may be able to back it up with some data, but that doesn't mean that it's the actual story. Going out there and testing it and making sure it actually resonates with the audience, the character. Which is, like you had mentioned, more of the hero, making them the hero of the story, and it doesn't work. And do you find yourself, doing the smaller stories where you kind of do your story, and then you realize that story doesn't work, you just put that in the queue of the things that were invalid, and then just move on with other stories, so you have multiple versions of it. This didn't resonate with that person, this did resonate with that one. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, you can. It's sort of in the early stages, when you've got little, a lot of it is a gut check. So if you have personas ready, then those is going to be a character in your story. And when you draft little stories, you can easily see when one isn't very good or not, and iterate that way, just by doing little gut checks. If you're coming up with your personas while you're generating stories, and you'll also you'll be doing research, and so you'll know, okay, this story that I just think is what's going on, well, no, I did an interview today, and I was completely wrong. That's not why people do this. This is why people do this. So the kids, this is one thing that I do say a lot in the book, which is, this is not a process, but what it is to stay as lo-fi as possible to answer the questions you have. So, like good design practice, if you have a low fidelity question, stay low fidelity, and as you get more detailed, you can go higher fidelity. But in general, if you draw a squiggle and you map out a couple of plot points, and the story doesn't feel to you, then it's probably not a very good story. So it's a really good quick test to do.
Very good. Yeah, it's there was another great thing that you put in here, and something I'm going to be putting into my workshops going forward is what was it, the nine grid storyboard? Was it nine grids?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
being able to take your exact story arc, and all you have to do is simply illustrate that in the storyboard, and then you have your storyboard. Some people get so confused on how to actually complete a storyboard that they forget that it's got a story in it, not just a user flow of screens. Um, so, that's definitely something I'm going to be taking to my workshops.
I mean, it's really the part of the reason why, I don't think this was in the book either, but part of the reason why I've come back down to 9 panels is so that startup that I mentioned in the book, part of how we were able to convince our management that, hey, this product isn't working the way it is, was by showing them what the story we're telling the company would it like as a comic, as something that was drawn out with many panels, and I think it had like 13 panels or something like that. And the story, if we drew out, like a narrative arc, it would have just looked like a straight line with some squiggles. Like, it really weird, and it wasn't compelling at all. And so when we showed upper management, and the CEO, he wasn't happy about this, but eventually, we showed the CEO come like, this is what we're telling the world. This brand, this product is. Doesn't make any sense. His first reaction was, and it's way too long. He was like, why is this so long? It goes on forever and it doesn't go anywhere. That was kind of the point. And so, yeah, ever since I make sure that it's 9 panels or less, because again, we're not making movies. We're just not. It's super super simple ideas, quick, snappy, and it's all about gut check, making sure, like, yes, the product that people want in their lives, or this is flow that people are okay doing, and it's fluid, but has a little bit of good tension built in, and this is why people love it. So as an exercise, totally 9 panels. I only do it that way now.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Yeah, it seems like a way to also keep people out of the weeds. They want to detail the sign. They want to, here, let me go ahead and storyboard the sign-in screen. It's not exactly a key moment I'm looking for. How about the actual, the moments that are really going to matter in the story, not just signing into unless it is the sign-on process, then I could kind of see that. But
exactly, right? That's when you map it out as its own story, and that could be really, really important, and great. It might need to get its own due diligence, which is wonderful way to make sure that your sign up is working. And then you might do it to map out your 2-week onboarding to make sure that, okay, people signed up, and now 72 hours later, then what?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I want to respect your time. Thank you very much for coming on and speaking to us about your book. Fabulous. If you haven't read it, if you haven't picked it up, definitely pick this up. This is really a must read, and it connects the dots. I mean, a book isn't an island upon itself. At least that's the way I see it. Is that we map this out. We have these, and then then all of a sudden you partner it with this one. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, okay, here is my, my touch points. Well, what does the touch points look like? Oh, well, here's the origin that kind of goes along with the touch point. So they all kind of build upon each other, and it's just a wonderful accompaniment to the UX process. I can't thank you enough for providing us with this great stories architecture to present to our stakeholders and to iterate and to create concepts with.
Thank you, Brian. It was a pleasure talking to you. And one thing I will also add is, since I now know the only reason why people give because they're asked and then they're happy to give, I would love it if any of you have read the book and haven't done so already. The reviews on Amazon help us a ton. It helps the book up into search results and book get into other people. So if you haven't already done so and can leave you, I would absolutely appreciate it.
Absolutely. And if they want to see you in person, is there anywhere you're speaking at currently, or is your dance card full?
Yeah. So I'm going to be taking a little time off this spring and beginning of summer, and then we'll be speaking and teaching a workshop at the Design and Content Conference in Vancouver in July. And I will be keynoting a conference in the fall, which hasn't been announced, but it's going to be super fun and in the Midwest. And yeah, I can find out my speaking schedule on my website. It's donnalichaw.com. But I'm going to be at a bunch of different places in the fall, and also always available to come to your company, train your team, run a workshop with your team, and yeah, some time available. I think for that in the fall and winter, possibly late summer. So I'm booking up quickly. But I'm around on all the coasts.
Very good. Oh, and also on your website, and I'll include that. I think I included it inside of the meetup. You have a wonderful workbook that outlines exactly the questions you need to ask to actually conduct your workshops. So thank you for providing that.
Anytime.
Yeah. Well, thank you for everyone who has attended. It's been another wonderful session. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. And if you have any follow-up questions, I'm sure Donna would be happy to answer those at her Twitter handle. What is that, Donna?
My Twitter handle is Blichaw. It's D Lichaw. And yeah, definitely get in touch. Twitter, my website. You can email me anytime. I'm always available to answer questions, chatting with you about how you're using Story, what kind of cool things you're coming up with, and possibly how I can help you build more engaging product services.
Wonderful. And look for our next meetup. I'm going to be posting out the next book probably in the next couple days. I'm looking at possibly the next one. I know a lot of people, a lot of our members have mentioned that they want more in research, and I said, you know what, we need to take it all the way back to the beginning and start thinking about user needs. So I've reached out to Anthony Olwick, who created a book or wrote a book called What Customers Want. It's a fabulous book. I'm hoping to get him secured for next month, for the month of May. And he's going to explain outcome-based innovation and how to look at, I believe it's Chris Christensen's jobs to be done, and really takes that framework and says, how can I go ahead and make that, as far as the jobs that need to be done, and to measure those jobs to find opportunities in my sector. So I'm going to go ahead and post that up coming up soon. So look for that in the next couple of days. Otherwise, Donna, thank you for a wonderful event. And to everyone else, thank you for your time and have a great day.
Thank you, and thank everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Goodbye.